Committing a murder, while not a mandatory requirement for joining Cosa Nostra, was a common occurrence within the organization. Murder served as the cornerstone of Cosa Nostra, providing control, discipline, and the ability to attain and retain power. Members and associates regarded it as a normal part of life. The rules dictating when a hit should occur were clear, cut. Anyone who broke them would face the consequences. Murder served as a means to bring order to what would otherwise be chaotic. The process for carrying out a Cosa Nostra hit, in theory, involved building a case and obtaining approval from the family boss. Unsanctioned murders resulted in immediate retaliation. However, despite these protocols, transgressions still occurred due to fear, jealousy, desperation, and greed. In early 1970, Shorty Spiro approached me. I was 25 years old at the time. "Are you willing to take someone's life for the betterment of the family?" Spiro questioned. "I have a task for you. It has been approved by the boss. Pulling the trigger in a hit is the simplest part. The target in this case was Joe Colucci." I was shocked. He was associated with Shorty, just like me. I knew him well. He was a tough guy, and he had a stunning wife named, in the underworld, Camille, with her jet black hair and captivating presence, was amidst whispered rumors of Tommy Spiro's illicit advances. Yet I disregarded these murmurs, for they fell outside my realm of concern. However, I was well aware that encroaching upon another man's marital sanctity was a cardinal sin, an unforgivable transgression of honor. "Joe intends to eliminate you," Shorty conveyed with a somber tone. "Me?" I queried, perplexed by this revelation. Why would Joe target me? The unfolding narrative unraveled before me, yet it held no logical foundation. I was expected to execute an act devoid of questions, devoid of hesitation, and devoid of personal sentiment, all for the purported benefit of the family. Rumors had reached Joe Colucci's ears as well, and he was meticulously plotting his next move. Colucci's plan, though cunning, was ultimately flawed. He believed that seeking permission to eliminate Tommy Spiro would be futile, considering Tommy's close kinship with Shorty. Thus, by seeking authorization, he unknowingly placed himself in a precarious position, transforming himself from a perpetrator of justice to a perpetrator of injustice. This is where I entered the equation. Joe realized that eliminating Tommy alone would be easily attributed to him by Shorty, his cunning rival. Hence, he devised a more elaborate scheme, aiming to eliminate both Shorty and myself. This calculated move would sow confusion and uncertainty, allowing him to distance himself from the incident. He would feign concern, express sympathy for Shorty's loss, and bide his time until the opportune moment to strike again. Joe's fatal error, however, lay in confiding his plan to another member of our circle, Frankie. Frankie, harboring a personal grudge against Tommy, readily agreed to assist Joe in his nefarious plot. Frankie's involvement complicated matters, as he pressed Joe for an explanation regarding the intended elimination of Shorty and myself. "Sleeping with your wife? It's a tricky situation." That's when Joe Colucci reveals his plan to take out Tommy, but Frankie is uneasy about it. He decides to confide in Shorty and tell him everything. Shorty in turn informs Junior Persico, and they bring the matter to the boss, Joe Columbo, to authorize the hit on Colucci. This is all information I'm getting from Shorty, but I have my doubts. Can I really trust that Joe wants to kill me? I go to Frankie for confirmation. I ask him directly, and he assures me that it's true. He's sick about it, but won't be involved in the plot. He emphasizes that he did the right thing by informing me. Satisfied with Frankie's response, I decide to go along with it. Personally, I believe if Joe had approached Shorty directly about his issues with Tommy, Shorty would have understood. Shorty had integrity and wouldn't tolerate someone betraying our way of life. He may have even confronted his brother Ralph and spoken to him about it, acknowledging that Colucci had a valid point engaging in another risky activity. I believe Shorty would have approached the problem differently. He would have convinced Joe to back down, understanding that Joe didn't have the authority to eliminate Tommy. Joe was just a member of the crew, not a high-ranking individual, and he wasn't affiliated with anyone else's family. Furthermore, complicating matters was the fact that there were personal family connections involved. They likely would have resolved the issue by appeasing Joe, downplaying the situation, and reprimanding Tommy for his actions with Joe's wife. However, Joe Colucci chose a different path. He had devised a plan that showed no concern for the people he would harm in the process. This marked my first assassination. I was in charge. Tommy and Frankie were my team. I informed Shorty that we didn't require any additional assistance. Being in a leadership role was familiar to me. I had always been the one leading the way in burglaries and armed robberies. I obtained the weapon and devised our strategy. Looking back, I now realize how fortunate I was to miss some important details. I still had much to learn. When it comes to carrying out an assassination, pulling the trigger is the easiest part because it requires no intellectual thought. About a week after meeting with Shorty, we executed our plan. Time was of the essence. At any moment, Joe could have instructed Frankie to prepare to eliminate both Shorty and me. And Frankie could have panicked and warned Joe to back off. I arranged for me, Frankie, Tommy, and Joe to spend the evening going from one club to another. It's ironic, really. Joe Colucci was joking and having a good time with Tommy, the man he wanted dead for making advances on his wife. Frankie was caught in the crossfire, involved in both sides of the story. And here I was, on my first assassination, simultaneously the hunter and the hunted. Just another day in the life of organized crime. Finally, at one particular club, after some dancing and light-hearted banter with local girls, we left to grab a meal at a cafeteria before embarking on another risky endeavor. We embarked on our ride in a compact two-door vehicle intending for Frankie and me to take the back seat while Joe and Tommy occupied the front. However, things took an unexpected turn when we reached the car as Joe hastily darted into the back. A sense of tension enveloped us, with Joe remaining on high alert. With no other choice, we proceeded to make our way to the cafeteria. Once we completed our meal, Joe excused himself to use the restroom. Seizing the opportunity, I urged Tommy to engage Joe in conversation, granting Frankie and me a chance to slip into the back seat unnoticed. It was imperative that we get this done and over with. Joe, already fatigued, seemed to lower his guard upon returning to the car. In a playful manner, he instructed me to occupy the back seat, just not directly behind him. However, a sense of unease began to wash over me. Could he possibly suspect anything? I grew increasingly anxious. Yet, as Joe remained silent, I eventually managed to calm my nerves. The time was now 4 a.m, and it seemed like his comment was merely a passing remark. I positioned myself behind Tommy. It never ceases to amaze how vividly we recall the intricate details of significant moments. The events of that night, etched into my mind, continued to play out as though they occurred just yesterday. We engaged in banter and humor as we leisurely drove down the street, with Tommy increasing the volume of the radio. A tune by the Beatles filled the air. Though the seating arrangement didn't align precisely with my wishes, I surreptitiously reached under my jacket, feeling the grip of my .38 caliber gun. The music seemed to grow louder, more intense, and as that Beatles song reverberated, I transformed into a remorseless killer. Joe Colucci's life was about to be extinguished. I was the one assigned to pull the trigger, motivated by his plot to end mine. Unleashing an indescribable rage, I silently cursed him. Even though I occupied a spot slightly offset from directly behind him, I felt invisible. My gun was aimed inches from the back of his head. Time decelerated, everything occurring in agonizing slow motion. It was as if I could practically feel the bullet leaving the barrel and piercing his skull. An odd sensation washed over me. I registered no sound from the initial shot, no sight of blood. His head remained motionless, as though the bullet had vanished, leaving behind nothing but a void. Logically, it couldn't have missed, not with the proximity of the gun, but it felt as though I had been thrust into an alternate reality, a surreal dream. In an eerie repetition, my finger squeezed the trigger once again, hitting the same spot as before. But this time, a profound shift occurred. The scene unfolded before my eyes in a flurry. The blinding flash, the pungent stench of gunpowder, and the thunderous noise that engulfed my senses. As the bullet found its mark, I witnessed Joe Colucci's head snap back, his body convulsing before slipping lifelessly to the side. Blood spilled forth, a chilling contrast to his seemingly peaceful countenance, resembling someone deep in slumber. A chilling thought invaded my mind. Will they now turn their weapons against me? The ensuing chaos between Tommy and Frankie reached a crescendo, but the details of their heated exchange remained shrouded by the haze of that fateful night. I implored them, my voice seething with urgency, to cease their verbal assault. My instructions were clear. Tommy had to navigate the Belt Parkway and exit at Rockaway Park. We had the ghastly task of disposing of the lifeless body. An indescribable cocktail of rage, violence, and intensity permeated the confined space of the car. Gripped by this volatile mixture, we continued our journey after the designated exit, seeking solace within a serene residential neighborhood. We veered onto a quiet side street, where I commanded Tommy to expel the burdensome cadaver from the vehicle. Disbelief clawed at my mind when Tommy confessed he couldn't carry out the task, claiming an overwhelming sense of nausea. Fearful of touching Joe's lifeless form, he pleaded for exemption. Driven by an unrelenting surge of adrenaline, I maneuvered past Frankie, clambering out of the rear passenger window. With trembling arms, I embraced Joe's motionless body, grappling with its unwieldy weight. The sensation of dragging his lifeless form remains etched deep in my memory. My actions lacked grace, yet propelled by the lingering rush, I released Joe's body and left its sprawled face, down on the desolate street. Returning to the sanctuary of the car, I occupied his vacated seat, hastily shutting the door. A somber determination filled my veins as I aimed the weapon out of the window, inflicting 3 additional shots onto the inert figure. Each bullet sent his body jerking with undeniable finality. The contract had been executed with unequivocal certainty. Commanding Tommy to resume our hasty escape, his nerves frazzled, he carelessly ran a red light. The last thing we needed was an encounter with law enforcement. In a strained voice tinged with urgency, I urged him to compose himself. As my hand inadvertently brushed against the seat, a cold wetness startled me. Joe's blood had seeped into the upholstery, a chilling reminder of the gruesome act we had just committed. Reflecting back, perhaps utilizing a stolen vehicle would have been a wiser choice. Crossing a bridge, I cast the weapon into the depths of the water, relinquishing the tangible evidence that could lead back to us. In the heart of Manhattan's bustling streets, Carmine Persico, the heir apparent to the Columbo family, held court in a luxurious hotel suite. His inner circle gathered around him. Langella, his future underboss, Sal Albanese, a powerful captain, alley boy. I, a nervous newcomer, entered the suite, meeting Carmine's piercing gaze. Carmine eased my anxiety, assuring me that everyone present had participated in the recent hit on Joe, forging an unbreakable blood bond. Tommy recounted the details of the hit, painting it as a simple, almost effortless task. I remained silent, taking in the gravity of the situation. Carmine and Shorty stepped into another room for a private discussion, emerging with a firm handshake. As they departed, Shorty conveyed Carmine's approval of their work, and I felt a surge of pride and affection for the family. Later, while I joined Frankie and Tommy for a funeral, feigning grief for Joe. On a subsequent day, while driving along the Belt Parkway toward Long Island, Frankie suddenly called for a stop, feeling unwell. He exited the car and vomited by the roadside. I expressed concern, but Frankie's ashen face and tearful eyes revealed a deeper fear. He confessed that since Joe's hit, he had lived in constant terror, haunted by the possibility of becoming the next target, as Joe had once sought his help. In the clutches of destiny's cruel hand, I found myself ensnared in a web of violence and betrayal. My conscience weighed heavily as the realization settled upon me that I had taken the life of a comrade, ensnared by the deadly tendrils of the mob's command. This was the path I had chosen, a treacherous labyrinth where loyalty and morality crumbled. A harrowing encounter awaited me as I locked gazes with another friend, his eyes brimming with fear and trepidation. The dread that gripped him was palpable, a haunting specter of the fate that might befall him. I sought to dispel his apprehension, offering words of solace and reassurance. "Frankie," I implored, "are you out of your mind? You saved my life, and I would never repay you with harm." The score we had set out to achieve remained elusive, forever lost in the wake of Frankie's departure. That encounter marked the final time our paths crossed. He vanished, seeking refuge in the vast heartland of America, far from the clutches of our dangerous existence. This life, with its dark underbelly and constant threats, was not for him. His image lingers in my thoughts, his memory a haunting reminder of the choices I have made. I wonder if he too ponders our shared past, if the specter of our tumultuous friendship still lingers in the recesses of his mind. In the aftermath of the Colucci incident, Tommy Spiro found himself entangled in a brief marriage with Camille. However, fate took a turn as Camille recognized Tommy's true nature, perceiving him as a vacuous individual. She consequently departed from their relationship, choosing to pursue another path with a different companion. Despite his aspirations, Tommy's efforts to attain maid status remained unfulfilled. Tragedy struck when both his father and uncle fell victim to deadly attacks, prompting the Columbo family to hound him relentlessly. During a tense meeting, Gary Lang dealt Tommy a humiliating blow by delivering a resounding slap across his face, a symbolic gesture that stripped him of his standing within the organization. His reputation tarnished. Tommy's life spiraled into a downward trajectory, eventually leading him to succumb to addiction. While I never faced questioning from law enforcement regarding the Colucci incident, it proved to be a pivotal moment in my journey within the criminal underworld. Following the event, the perception of my standing underwent a significant transformation. Whether it was at a disco or a club, I encountered an unexpected level of deference. Bouncers would discreetly inform the establishment's manager of my presence, resulting in immediate seating and complimentary drink. Initially, I struggled to comprehend the sudden change in treatment. However, the ripples of the Colucci incident had spread far and wide. Whispers circulated throughout the underworld, attributing the successful hit to Shorty's crew, with myself, Sammy the Bull, emerging as the group's driving force. Consequently, the days of waiting in lines and being just another tough guy on the street vanished. A new era of respect unfolded before me, fueled by the whispered rumors of my close association with Carmine Persico. The word on the street was that once the books were opened again, I, Sammy the Bull, would finally attain the coveted status of maid.